I am excited for the opportunity. First of all, this is your podcast, and you have given me the humbling opportunity to be on with you to kind of introduce you and the show to all of your new listeners. And I'm excited that you're going to be bringing so much value to them. And so for those of you out there who are just finding the estate connection, you're going to get to know Penny today, as well as why she's so passionate about all the topics surrounding the estate connection. And so, Penny, tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what your current primary role is. Just give them some background. Who are you?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, David. You're so awesome. So I'm Penny Parker. I'm a Phoenix native, Arizona born. I've lived here most of my life. I'm a real estate agent. And much more than a real estate agent, but let's simplify it. I'm a real estate agent. I love what I do, and I have kind of fallen into this niche. So the niche that I am very passionate about is probate, trust, and divorce. And most people think I'm crazy.
I was just going to say, all three of those words are really scary words.
Right.
So all right, I have to step back for a second because you're not just a real estate agent. And as a real estate professional and a consultant, I've been able to see firsthand how you serve clients at a super high level and your passion around helping people. And I think that's just evident in the fact that you've niched into this area. You're helping people navigate really difficult things. And so I have to ask, okay, before getting into the niche and into all these different things, what would you say is your superpower as a real estate agent?
Yes. So my superpower is communication. I'm not only communication, but I'm a great listener. So I think that goes hand in hand because then you ask the questions, right? You hear what people are telling you. Mostly it's some kind of problem to be solved. And that is probably why I'm in this niche, because I'm great at problem solving. And so when I hear these stories and, what brought me to them, then we get together as a team and figure out the next steps, kind of like a project manager. So I call myself a project manager for the property and, obviously for my clients.
Well, and so the ability to communicate at a high level and especially listen also is going to make you a great podcaster. And I think one of the things that I've learned being a podcaster over the last few years is that the ability to ask a question and then just be quiet and let the guest speak is so powerful. And I think that's really what our audience wants. So I'm excited for your audience to get that type of value from you. I want to ask, how did you get into the divorce, trust, probate, that niche inside of real estate?
Yeah. So obviously, it's not easy. People are coming from, a process of loss or pain or something like that. So I think that when you've gone through something like that for yourself, that you have deep compassion and you can understand what they are going through, and then also give them hope. Hope that, hey, you're going to come out of this and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the exact statistic is. Maybe but I mean, isn't it something like 60% of marriages end in divorce now? So this is a common scenario.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think that statistic, is pretty spot on. And I know things have gotten worse since the pandemic, and all that. And I personally went through a divorce. It's been quite a while now. I want to say it's been, I've totally forgotten how long it is, but 10 or 12 years ago. And so just when I went through that process, I was actually not living in Phoenix at the time. That's one of the times that I had moved away. I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I had only been there for a short time, didn't have any relatives around me. I did have, had made a couple of close friends through real estate, that kind of thing. So just not knowing where do you go? What do you do? How do you get through this basically? And that's kind of how the process started for me. And then when I came back to Phoenix, it had been a little bit of time, but I thought, gosh, I would really like to help, be able to help people who went through that. So I found this amazing school here in Tempe. And I went and got doubly certified in life coaching. So basically, having gone through that process, it was about a year and a half worth of schooling. it was the best therapy I could have went through personally. So that just gave me the tools to be able to help. And it helps me every day in my life. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether it's real estate or my personal life. It's just a really great process to have gone through and know how to help.
So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I have to ask, like, personally, like when you were going through that divorce, did you find it difficult to find like resources and help?
Well, luckily, yes, I'm gonna say that, yes. And I'm really good at asking a lot of questions and seeking and looking for an answer. So, I had a friend there, and they recommended a divorce lawyer to me, and she was younger, kind of going up through the ranks as well herself, and she was awesome. I have to say that I got really lucky on that one, and she did help and provide, but still, I was still in that process of just seeking help and that kind of stuff. So yes, on one hand, I got lucky. On the other hand, it was still a process of looking for answers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So okay, so you go through this event in your life,
Mhm.
and you don't let it define you. You go into life coaching, and that's really a positive experience for you. And that's only part of like the estate connection and what you're seeking to do inside this. Like, how are you connected to these like other aspects of estate and trust and all of those things?
Yeah, so that I'm connected much further into that. So what's exciting is like as I was growing up, my mother was always an antiquer, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have very much money, so she was always out looking for a great bargain and really nice furniture, right? So we had some really awesome old vintage furniture that's really
Very
fantastic.
neat.
Yeah, so it was fun to grow up that way. And, so that got me kind of excited about it, where you could find really cool things and, resell them. So when I was, gosh, I think I was 21 or 22, I don't remember, but I dropped out of college and I thought, you know what, I'm going to open up my own vintage store. So actually, my mom,
Interesting.
yeah. So my mom and I had a mid-century modern store, or antique. It's getting closer to antique. It's not quite antique yet. So we did that for over 20 years, and
20 years.
yes, 20
Wow.
years. So during that process, I had went to thousands of estate sales, and actually I bought my first single family home when I was 22. I'd bought a little triplex. So I kind of had moved up, but I think I was 28 when I bought that, but I got it at an estate sale. So I got called to look at the furniture. And it's a really cool story because it was in downtown Glendale, Arizona. There's a little section called the Catlin Court, and they're all vintage homes, and a lot of them have businesses out of them now. But this was the original family, and it was built in 1928. And she was in like an assisted living home or something like that. And they loved that I had, at the time, my store had moved to downtown Glendale, and they loved that I had a business there, just like they had the original tire shop in downtown
Okay.
Glendale.
I don't mean to interrupt, Penny, but like you said 1932?
No, 1928, the house was built.
1928?
Yes.
I didn't even know like Glendale like existed.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think, it did. Yeah.
That's
People
crazy.
actually live there. I know. It's the Arizona history is pretty fascinating once you dive down, a little bit deeper into it. But yeah, so I lived in a house. I bought it, had no windows, had boards over the windows. And I was one of those young people that said, okay, we can do this.
Roll the sleeves
Yeah.
up.
And I just moved
adventure.
in, had no heat, had no air conditioning, had a swamp cooler. So I suffered for a couple of years.
Wow.
But I did it. I love that house. I lived in it for 11 years.
So I want to go a little deeper on, the estate sales and antique stores, just that business in general. I grew up in a town of 1,500 people, one stoplight, and
Oh,
the only
fun.
shopping was antique stores. I mean,
Mhm,
just
mhm.
lined up in my little town out in Maine. And it's always interesting to me. One of the things that I remember always asking going into those stores as a teenager, I was fascinated by how much inventory these stores had, and how, and it's probably just my own nativity, like how little it seemed that inventory moved. And
Mhm.
so I'm kind of fascinated just by like the business of antiques. Could you take, just for my own knowledge, like what does that look like when you're like going to these estate sales? Like, how do you know how much inventory to buy, what the right pieces to buy, what's going to sell? How do you gain that type of knowledge?
Well, it's all by trial and error, right? So some things you do extremely well on, some things you don't, and you just don't know. So I always say buy what you like because you may be stuck with it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's basically trial and error. There's a lot more information now than there used to be back. Oh my gosh, I've got to think like 25 years ago. eBay was just starting, and all that stuff that goes with that. So there's a lot more out there, and you can shop worldwide. Where it used to be
Okay.
very
Yeah.
local and hyper local, like right in your
So it sounds
area.
like, yeah, now that this business has become more data driven,
Mm-hmm.
just like any other business,
Mm-hmm.
because we
Mm-hmm.
have that tool connected through the internet.
Right, right, right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to know about going to estate sales in general. First off, and this is a very rookie question on my part, but is there any difference between, and for listeners out there, like any difference between a yard sale, a garage sale, an estate sale? Like, what is all the difference there? And when you go to an estate sale, like, what's the magic of an estate sale?
Yeah. So the great thing about an estate sale is you just open the doors to the home, and it's everything usually that comes in a home. I mean, it could be anything. It could be cars, boats, you name it, and it gets sold on an estate sale. Um, Gosh, clothing, just everything.
So pretty much anything inside the doors
Yes.
becomes up
Yes.
for grabs.
Right.
And how does someone like how do you get to an estate sale? Like what happens such that this type of sale is even in existence?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of different things that would trigger an estate sale. Obviously, a death. The next thing would be moving, like totally downsizing. Another one is divorce, where you have to split the proceeds, that kind of thing. So those are the major things that trigger an estate sale. This is your host, Penny Parker. I'm also a realtor with Keller Williams Arizona Realty. I can help you or anyone you know with their real estate needs. If you're not in Arizona, I have a network of over 190,000 agents all over the world. My contact info is in the description. I'm happy to help. Now back to the episode.
So okay, so you own this business for 20 some years. It gives you this like deep knowledge base of estate. And so as you think about now your real estate business, how has that experience directly made you a better realtor for your clients?
Oh gosh, yeah. So there's obviously a lot of different ways, just because dealing with the public and knowing. But what sets me apart, I think, because of that in the probate trust business is that I know how they work. So when I moved away, I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. My mom and I were hauling furniture. We had a big 32-foot box truck, and we were doing shows in LA and San Francisco. So we didn't like little pieces of jewelry. We like big, beautiful pieces of furniture. So it's just really crazy. So when I moved away, we started this estate sale company just because of, she couldn't do that anymore. And we had kind of got tired of having an open retail space. Like we were hardly open there at the end. We would just open like on Saturday for a few hours kind of thing. So, but what we were doing, we were using the area and the space to shop because, we're real close to Sun City, those types of retirement communities. So there was a lot, to buy in those areas. So starting it from the ground up and really working it, trial and error and seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then experience what we did like and what we didn't like about the different people who ran the different sales that we, bought at over the years. So it gave us a real clear picture of, okay, this is how we want to run it. This is, what we need to do. So it took off. My mother took it off, and she just ran with it. So that's really her passion. She is semi-retired, so she still does it today. But that's what helps. Like when I go to somebody's house to talk to them after their loved one has died, and or or they're moving, kind of into assisted living, I can give them a clear picture of exactly how the process works. Not only for the estate sale, because that's usually the first process, because the house is worth usually. The house is worth the most, and that's usually the largest asset that somebody owns. So, but what we do, or what I do, is I use the estate sale to get the house sold. So if you think about it, um, at least with my mom's estate sale, there's at least 100 people in line. There could be hundreds. We had one sale where I think there was about 800 people in line. It just went,
How do you
around the block.
that's an open house.
Yeah, so that is very hard to manage. You need a lot of people and crowd control, that type of stuff. And this whole process could be, obviously, it'll be another podcast down the line. But there's a process that I use. So if you're having an open house, like to have a successful open house, I would say at least 20 or people or more. It really only takes one person to come into the open house and want to buy the house and put an offer, right? So it only takes one. So what I do is I use the process of the estate sale to get the house sold. So it's interesting process, and we could discuss it further if wanted, but you can probably get the idea of what happens.
Well,
there.
to me, I assume this probably does become an episode in of itself. So I don't want to take away from that, because this is a very unique process. And I think a lot of people that are in the real estate profession will find this very interesting and valuable topic. And even myself, like knowing and consulting literally hundreds of agents, over my career, I think that's the first time that I've ever heard an agent say, I use the estate sale to sell the house. And so I think that's just a really fascinating topic. You probably have to come on my podcast sometimes for
I would love
for
that.
us to talk through that.
Yes.
So Penny, who's your ideal client then? Like you've already touched on it a little bit, but
Right.
who are they? How do they find you? And what specifically do you provide beyond just the knowledge of the process and a listening ear? Is there anything else that, if I were to sit here with your clients and say, hey, why do you work with Penny Parker? Like, what would they say?
Yeah. So I get a lot of great feedback. And it's I guess it's not funny, but it's true. I keep my clients forever. Like I feel like they're great friends. We throw a big party for the holidays, and I may have helped like sell their mother's house, and then I help sell their house if they're downsizing, their kids, everything. So I feel like really lucky, and I think why they like working with me is, one, I know what I'm doing. We can always learn. I'm always learning, taking as many classes as I can to
I can attest to that.
grow
You're
myself.
always in the classroom.
Yeah, because hey, you might hear one thing and, it can help, help myself, help my clients, do a better job. So I think it's that and the communication. Like I really pride myself on, you hear stories, well, I never heard from them. I didn't know what was going on. So I at least touch base with my clients once a week, just to give them an update. Hey, this happened, and we need to do next steps. So I think when you're grieving, just having somebody there to help guide you and say, okay, these are the next steps. So what's coming, and like when we get to that step, you go, oh yeah, I remember you telling me this is what I need to do. So it falls right into line, and then it's kind of like educating them at the same time, and we move together through the process as a team. So, yeah.
I heard you say two things just, during that. It sounds like to me you really have come to understand the lifetime value of a client. And I think a lot of real estate professionals are very short-sighted in the way that they handle clients transactionally. And they may not even realize that they do it. And yet what I find is that the most successful agents that have sustainable success in this business recognize the lifetime value of a client, not just from a transactional perspective, but from a relational perspective. And it seems like you've really tapped into that. So that's one thing. The second thing, and I think this transcends whether someone's working in, estates, divorces, trust, probate, any of that, it's just a customer service principle. It's you really anticipate the needs of your clients, and you do that by communicating clear process and steps. And that's something that really, if an agent or a client, really grasped that value, it's often not until the end of a transaction that a client realizes how important that is. And so for anyone that's listening to this that is a potential client, I want you to understand that the value of anticipatory service is something that you are going to come to just wish that you had if you're not working with a professional like that. I'm curious, you mentioned the grieving process, and obviously these are times in a client's life where they're going through a lot. What would you say, Penny, is like one or maybe a couple things that an individual can do to make this process easier for themselves as they go through this?
Right, right. So that's a good point. So when I get called in, sometimes, like I have an appointment right after this, and I don't think the family has contacted a lawyer or anything like that. So I'll get called in sometimes because they don't know the laws or what has to happen in Arizona. So I think you just get the right person in from the beginning to guide you along, whether it's a lawyer or a trusted real estate professional, myself, just get the knowledge that, okay, this is what needs to happen. And then, move forward with that.
Yeah. Can you give an example of like a specific instance where,
Oh, yeah.
someone didn't do that or they did and it
Right.
made it easier on
Right. I
themselves?
have quite a few examples of that. So I got a call one time to come in to help broker the estate sale and for the house. And so we went in, and they just had to come in from California. In this instance, their father had passed away. So we went in, and they just thought that they could sell the house, right? So digging deeper, right? You always have to dig deeper and find out the questions. And this is both on the divorce too, and on this probate trust. So we found out that there was a reverse mortgage on the house. Um, they had to go to probate because there was no, trust in place. So this is we're talking Arizona laws, by the way, and all laws are different. There are a lot of the same, but they're all different. It matters what state you're in. So basically, I had to start digging and finding out they had no information. There was no information left for them. They didn't know who held the mortgage or the reverse mortgage or anything like that. If there was insurance on the house, they knew absolutely nothing. So basically, we just started digging and uncovering some paperwork and stuff like that. So we found out that there would potentially be maybe once a house was sold, a profit of $12,000, which is great, right? So that's something compared to nothing, right? Just letting the house go back. So that was great. And then we conducted the estate sale and we got the house sold. Yeah, yeah. And then another one, kind of along the same line, but they knew, that they would have to go through probate. It was a brother had passed away. And this is a fascinating story because I ended up having to go to court and testify for the family.
Wow.
It wasn't too egregious, but it was an interesting process. So what happened was the brother had a will, and he had crossed out his older brother's name and written in his sister. He had quite a few siblings and written in her name, to be the executor of the estate, hand wrote it
Okay.
in. And I can't remember. I did see it. I don't know if he initialed it or signed near it and dated it. Okay, so I come in and we talked about it. She had not hired a lawyer yet. And she thought that she could do the process herself, which you can do. You can go down to the county and file if you want. So I don't recommend that because something that should have taken 2 or 3 weeks ended up taking 3 or 4 months, and
Okay.
it wasted a lot of money.
Is that
Yeah.
is that a mistake that you see like
I
happening?
see that.
Does
Yeah.
that happen a lot?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And I always encourage people to use professionals because professionals know what they are doing. One, they're going to save you money and they're going to save you time. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's all across the board.
Yeah.
So I saw that happen. And then the brother whose name had gotten crossed off of the will, she started out as the executor, and I had already got a great contract on the house. The house was in okay shape; it did need some work, but I got a great contract on the house that the family was all in agreement to accept that contract. They all thought, yes, that's a great price for the house. Let's all move forward. But right before all that happened, the brother had contested the sister being the executive of the estate. So even though everybody was in
In agreement,
agreement,
yeah.
we still had to go to court. We had to post in a newspaper, we had to post on the front door, and luckily the buyers were willing to wait. So the process took about 6 weeks longer than it should have. But it was interesting process. So I did have to go to court and swear in that, we had posted on the door and that, yes, and everybody was in agreement. So it was interesting. And it's always interesting.
So you're clearly ultra knowledgeable about this niche, and you've become very successful in this niche. I want to ask you, like, why the Estate Connection podcast? What are you hoping that listeners gain from it?
Yeah. So knowledge, that's the biggest thing. So basically, my thought process around the estate connection is that, we have the house centered in the middle, but there's all these other vendors and people that are involved in the process. So my idea is to bring them in one at a time. So I have a trusted team that I've worked with for years, one of them for forever. And he'll be our next episode, personal property appraiser. And you guys will really love him and love that episode. So just bring them in, one at a time and hear their stories, how they got involved and how they help people. And everyone on my team works like I do. We take the extra mile and, we'll help whether we are the right person, for the thing or not. So if somebody calls me and, I'm still going to help them even if there's, no money in this state or the house can't, be sold because of that reason. So I'm still going to help them and help them get, to where they need to be, that kind of thing. And everybody on my team works the same way I do. Lots of communication and just bends over backwards to do what we can.
Well, that comes full circle back to what you shared was your superpower, which is communication and the ability to listen and ask questions, and to have a team that models that in alignment with you is awesome. And I'm someone who believes that knowledge is power. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who they may think they know the mechanics around, what happens within a estate when someone dies or during a divorce. And yet there's so much misinformation out there. And so it excites me that someone as knowledgeable, an expert in this area as you, is able to bring on trusted guests and bring that knowledge to listeners. And so I think I'll be a regular listener.
Awesome.
And I know that many out there will be. How can people find you, contact you, connect with the Estate Connection?
Yes.
All those things.
Yeah, definitely. So my information will be on this podcast. You don't know this, but I have a little commercial on the podcast. Yeah. And I just want to point out too, say you're living somewhere else in another state or even another country. That could be another whole podcast, how I've helped people in other countries. I usually don't even get to meet them. I just get keys sent to me and we do the process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The furthest was South Africa. That was really interesting because he was in a war zone. And so we had to get all the paper, get him to some embassy and get everything signed. So,
Wow.
I mean, when I'm telling you this process is so interesting, you just wouldn't believe the stories. So you could, obviously it's going to be there in the comments, and I'm easy to get a hold of. My number is my cell phone number, and I love to answer my phone. If I don't answer it, it just means I'm with a client or on the other line. So it's just easier to pick up the phone than
you
have
don't
to call
hear
somebody
many
back.
people say, "I love to answer the phone."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I really love to help. I want to hear the stories. I want to reiterate that there's no shame. Sometimes there's shame. There could be hoarding situations or, just something that got out of control. So believe me, I don't judge. I've heard everything. I've seen everything. I've personally been through a lot. So, I don't want anybody judging me, so I don't, I will never judge anyone.
I just hear like empathy, like you're able to have empathy for your clients because you've walked through this in all the aspects that we just discussed.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. If you need an agent or need help, I know estate professionals, I know real estate agents all over the world. I'd be happy to connect you with someone awesome that can help you in the same capacity that I could. And then, just call me. Maybe there's other ways for me to help you.
Well, Penny, I appreciate the opportunity to sit on the inaugural episode of the Estate Connection with you and give your audience just a chance to meet you, learn why this is such an important topic. And I can say from my perspective that this is something that is going to be highly valuable because I don't think there's a lot of information out there to this caliber that you're going to provide. And so I just feel fortunate to have gotten to spend this time with you. And for everyone out there, I do hope that immediately following this episode, you will hit subscribe. You will leave a comment, a rating, and a review, because this is how Penny is going to be able to bring you the most valuable guests and conversations each and every episode.
Well, David, before we leave, I want to know that I want you to share your information with everyone because David has the most amazing podcast. And if it wasn't for you, I would not be doing this.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. And and you can definitely find my content on Real Talk with David Morse. It is on all major podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, all of those things, as I'm sure the Estate Connection will be. We have several hundred episodes out there, all talking to real estate agents like Penny, investors, thought leaders, and authors, motivational speakers. So Penny, thank you for giving me a plug as well. I appreciate that. That wasn't needed.
No, it was. And thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, this has been the first episode of the Estate Connection. Is it fair to say more to come?
Yes, lots more to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for being with us today. Check out our other episodes. And if you found this helpful, give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you get this podcast.